The last thing I want to talk about today is Andrew Yang. Yang has made a very good criticism of the Democratic Party. And I think that more of us should probably take heed and listen to what he has to say here. So, let's go ahead and...
Democrats don't do a good job of speaking to working class people. What do you say to that? You're supposed to be fixing that.
So, before we listen to Yang specifically, I just want... Give me in the chat, if you believe that Democrats do a good job of speaking to working class people, then go ahead and give me a G. But if you think that Democrats do a bad job of speaking to working class people, then go ahead and throw me an H. I generally think they do a bad job at it, personally, but don't let my opinion sway you. And go ahead and throw the exact same stuff into the comment section too, if you have an opinion there. But at least for the live stream, it looks like the chat is very H. As generally it would be here. So, right now, we're beginning just with the predisposition that Democrats don't speak very well to the working class. Growlith speaks very well to the working class because many of us are, and she's just going at it and speaking to us constantly.
I had that experience countless times on the trail, Don, where I would say, hey, I'm running for president, to a truck driver, retail worker, a waitress in a diner, and they would say, what party? And I'd say Democrat, and they would flinch. Like I'd said something really negative, or I just I'd turned another color or something like that.
Now, why do you think that is? Why do you think that is? My theory, I could be wrong here, but my theory is that generally people view Democrats as the people who increase your taxes, and they view Republicans as the people who get the government out of your business affairs. They view Democrats as the people who want more regulation, and they view Republicans as the people who try to lower your taxes, give you tax cuts. And when your employer gets tax cuts and tax breaks, then you get an increase in your monetary supply. Now, that doesn't actually fucking happen. Trickle-down economics doesn't happen or work. But, woo! That's generally what I've seen, is people look at Republicans and go, they're going to make things better for me. They know how to rhetorically speak. Holy crap. Growlith! Growly girl. Come on. Come the heck on. You've been let outside 3 times on this stream so far. And you just keep on going back. No, you don't bark back at them. You don't do that. That makes them think you're trying to play. I want her to stop bork, not bork more. You just want to see me bark on stream.
And there's something deeply wrong when working class Americans have that response to a major party that theoretically is supposed to be fighting for them. So you have to ask yourself, what has the Democratic Party been standing for in their minds? And in their minds, the Democratic Party, unfortunately, has taken on this role of the coastal, urban elites who are more concerned about policing various cultural issues than improving their way of life. Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of what we get. You get a lot of the... You get a lot of people who look at the Democratic Party and suddenly assume that they're simultaneously all left-wing, but also against workers' rights. And then, at the same time, the Democratic Party are these liberal social police who, when you say one word out of line, out of what they consider to be PC, they're just against it. They immediately are against it. So I think Andrew's actually kind of on the money there. The perception of the Democratic Party is a perception of people who care more about kind of what you're saying and less about actually getting shit done, which, if we're not talking about realities so much right here as we are talking about the perception of what people see when they think of a modern-day Democrat. And that's kind of where we are. How much of it is true and how much of it is propaganda from the right? It doesn't really matter. Because once that cultural idea has been ingrained, once people have that idea in their mind that Democrats stand for this, budging that away is going to be incredibly difficult. It doesn't matter if it started off as propaganda or true. What matters is that's the perception now, and you've got to engage in changing that perception. You have to find avenues and ways of changing public perception about yourself and your party. I've got a lot of criticisms of the Democratic Party because I'm a leftist and they don't speak for me and my values, generally speaking. If they did, we would have already had universal health care by now. If they did, we would have already had better funded education by now. But we don't. So, for me, I think that they do not speak to working class people very well. They're not very good at that right now. And that needs to change.
Has been declining for years. And so if you're in that situation, this to me is a fundamental problem for the Democratic Party, because if they don't figure this out, then this polarization and division will get worse, not better.
Is that
true? Because here's the thing. You have working class people who are Democrats and you have working class people who are Republicans. A lot of time it kind of comes down to where they live. If you live in more rural areas, those areas tend to be more red. If you live in more population-dense areas, those areas tend to be more blue, at least as far as United States politics are concerned. But there are working class people in every single one, and a criticism that we make on the left about people who vote Republican is that usually if they're working class people, they're voting against their own interests. Like if you're a minimum wage worker and you're voting for Republican, that's always very strange to look at, because it's like how is anybody on that side of the political spectrum going to improve your life? What are they going to do directly that's going to affect you positively? Whereas you've got Biden here trying to push for a $15 minimum wage. So and things like his Medicare package, the Biden Unity package right now that he's trying to push for, that 110-page document going into their plan for healthcare. So when you look at stuff like that and you go, well, they probably are trying to push for more lower income Americans to get things that they need, but it's never argued effectively, and so people still end up voting Republican. And the question is why? What have the Republicans convinced you of that the Democrats failed in doing so? Ideally, both sides should be able to put forward convincing propaganda. Lies or otherwise, both sides should be able to convince you of a case. But it seems like Democrats are losing that case a lot, especially in rural areas. There's a ton of misconceptions that people have about how things like minimum wage works and how it affects people in the long run. And Democrats are not very good at communicating that. Like, for instance, right now, it's pretty much accepted by most economists, people who have actually gotten long tenured degrees and work in the field, not people who have done just economy 1 and 2, that the minimum wage has a very negative, or not negative, but a very minimal effect on the actual price of goods. If the price of a Big Mac, this is an example that was given to me today by a friend of mine who is an economist, if the price of a Big Mac goes up by 30%, but the minimum wage goes up by 100%, then the net value, the net spending potential for everybody who works under minimum wage has gone up, period. Like it's just a net positive. That's what the numbers show. So the price of goods argument, somebody can say, yeah, the Big Mac costs more. Or this insert thing here that you like costs more. But is it going to cost more than the, in this case, doubling of the minimum wage, than the 100% increase in your wage? If your wages doubled, does the price of things around you going up by 30% affect you negatively? No. It's a minor inconvenience at best, but it doesn't inconvenience you that much because you have more spending power. You have more ability to do things. And that is generally what people who functionally exist in those fields right now are projecting. But people who vote Republican don't see those numbers, and they believe very baseline propagandic stuff that comes from places like PragerU. Why is the Democratic Party so ineffective at arguing for this stuff? And I think part of it might come to the fact that they don't really embrace left-wing policies, and they don't really embrace left-wing marketing tactics. I hate to talk about Hitler here, but if there's one thing that Hitler knew to do, it was to embrace left-wing marketing tactics when pushing his party, because tactics that speak directly to disenfranchised workers, it works. It just flat out works. And Hitler knew that. The Democrats need to take that same approach. That's not me saying Democrats need to be like Hitler in literally everything else he did, but at least when it comes to marketing, you need to speak to those lower class people. You need to speak to the people who aren't just sitting in their white picket fenced home. You need to speak to people who are living in the boxed apartments down at Marietta. You need to be able to speak to those people. Use actual left-wing marketing tactics. Actual left-wing arguments instead of just trying to appeal to this moderate centrist approach. Actually embrace the left wing there, because the Republicans are already taking some of those marketing strategies and using them. They're weaponizing them against you, but our Democrats don't do that.
Real or messaging or both?
It's real. I mean, Debbie just said they lost a plant that had 1,500 workers. And so if you're a laid off worker from that plant and you look up and say, what is the Democratic Party doing for me? It's unclear. And we can talk about a unifying message from Joe Biden. He's a naturally very unifying figure. But then there's the reality on the ground where their way of life has been disintegrating for years. And if we don't address that, then you're going to see a continued acceleration toward the institutional mistrust that animated the Trump vote and will continue to do so.
Which is true. So, I hate to just sit here and just agree with Andrew Yang the entire time, but this is one of the reasons why the freedom dividend, the universal basic income idea that he was proposing, was so accepted for a lot of people. Because if you are a disenfranchised worker and you're losing your jobs because the thing your plant produces is no longer necessary, this is one of the issues with division of labor. That's a different video entirely. But the plant you're working with doesn't produce anything that people like desperately need anymore. You are not necessarily valued the way that you used to be. Your industry is just going away. Like if you're a coal worker and people are trying to move away from coal power and go into nuclear more, your job is needed less. So what do? Andrew Yang's method for that was to try to propose the freedom dividend. As people are gaining, or as society is getting more technology to help it move forward, people are losing jobs. As society gets more technocratic, there are fewer base level jobs that are required because many of them that have simpler tasks can be handled by machinery. He has proposed the freedom dividend as an answer to that, or a potential first step answer to that. Now, the ways in which the math tries to work out for it create problems. For instance, if you're already needing food stamps and then you get the freedom dividend cuts into your food stamps. So there are issues with it in general. But at the end of the day, the idea behind a universal basic income is probably one of the best ways forward. And I think if the Democratic Party were to accept that and move forward with that, like move forward with universal basic income, move forward with universal health care, move forward with 4 years of education paid for over and above the K through 12, that includes trade school, you can help people go on a path of getting out of poverty. And when somebody asks them, what has the Democratic Party done for you? You can go, paid for my school. You can go, they pay my bills. You can go, they do this. They paid for my grandma who had brain cancer. You can answer that question much easier. But you've also got to counteract all the rhetoric that's been used against you. And that's where the original conversation about engaging in that actual left-wing marketing comes in. You can't just functionally have everything better run on those things. You've also got to get the marketing there to convince people that those things are things they want. And if you can't, if you aren't able to, then we're going to continue to see races where Joe Biden is only a few percentages away in several districts from losing outright to an actual out-and-out fascist or white supremacist. You're going to see Republicans get more of those people who know how to speak using newspeak, speaking to the common people. And if you continue to fail to do so, then you're going to continue to fail, period. The Democratic Party does not know how to speak to its workers. Not right now. It needs to. So, let me know what you think. There's obviously the live chat going on right now, but if you are in the comment section later on when this goes up, let me know what you think about all that. And if you haven't already and you're watching, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the like button, do all that stuff. Do the call to action shit. If you haven't subbed, if you haven't liked, if you haven't hit the bell notification icon, those are all things you probably should do. You probably should do. But thank you, in any case.